Hello, I've entitled this video Measurement Process on the heels of talking about measurement, levels of measurement, and talk about the process of doing it in depth, and in more depth really than you will get in a textbook, and using some terms that don't appear in social science textbooks. This is an interest of mine, and it sort of follows from a belief that social scientists in general, and political scientists especially, give too little attention to the measurement process. The process itself produces a product. I'm going to use as one example of three, measuring your mastery of the material in a course using a test, and scoring it up with a level of measurement, ratio level. The 0 point is absolute. 0 point representing an absolute lack of anything correct on a test. Just going to walk through these definitionally at first, then add texture by making reference to concrete examples. Some political science examples, but also one of my own. Preparation. You won't find this in a textbook on social science research methods. I borrow the concept, the idea, from the physical sciences, where it's a very, very important, very critical issue, one that has as much to do with the production at the end of the day of a concrete measure as anything you as a researcher would do yourself on the way. Now, I'm going to make reference to nature, and I need to define what I mean by nature. I mean everything that we can't control. Everything that we can't control. And in doing social science, physical science too, but in doing social science, everything that we can't control is most things. The collection of everything that we cannot control greatly exceeds, on average, the many things that we can. Preparation of a measurement process defined. I'm talking about a social system containing units with attributes. And to speak of a preparation, I mean how it arrives to me before I begin the measurement process. It arrives either through nature alone, either wherein we can't really control anything. It arrives by nature plus you as the researcher, or me. Or it can arrive by nature plus you, or me, and many more. And you can do plus, more, and you. And I'll give you an example of each kind. Got a social system with units from which we intend to extract measurements that we don't control at all. I study the U.S. Supreme Court. The court sits and votes. Primarily it does two types of voting around a table in secret. The first kind is to decide whether to decide a case, yes or no, and the second vote is among those cases where the court has decided to decide. It votes to reverse or affirm a lower court case. I consider this nature all by itself, in the sense that I can't have any effect whatsoever on the process of measurement. If I want to study voting on the Supreme Court, I'm going to wind up with a matrix in a spreadsheet or an R that contains scores, zeros or ones, reverse or affirm, a vote to affirm a lower court, let's say, equals 1, and a vote to reverse equals 0. I'm going to have that in the spreadsheet, but I had no control at all over the process, the preparation of the system that brought me the zeros and ones. The court also, as I mentioned, votes whether or not to hear a case. It votes, there are petitions that are submitted to the court requesting that they hear a case and then decide to reverse or affirm. Those votes are taken in secret, and they're not reported. They're not reported to the public. The way that we get our hands on them as researchers is via the papers of justices who died and left their collection of papers to a university or maybe the Smithsonian. And we go through the papers and find sort of records where one justice has kept score on the docketing decisions. And that's the source. The whole system was prepared. The whole system of deciding the units. The whole system was way beyond any control of ours. We're only involved in transcribing, not even recording, the votes of the justices. And there can be discrepancies. Two justices may have kept score on the same case, and over and over again it's been found by researchers studying they score them differently. The votes of themselves, the votes of others. Errors are made in the process that we have about which we have no control at all. So that's a system that's prepared by what I call nature alone. Nature being those things involved in the process that are beyond control or manipulation by the researcher. Then there's nature plus you, the researcher, or me, the researcher. And here's an example of that. I prepared the social system for measurement because I taught the class, right? I taught the class, I made the videos, I sat with you, lectured in class, answered questions. I did that. I fielded email questions. One or two of you may have Skyped with me. Many of you will have texted me. I prepared that system for measurement myself, and yet nature played a role too. Because these folks are you. John, Jane, Joe, Jill, Jack, Jess, Jim, Jan, Jax, Jen. I had nothing whatsoever to do, or no control rather, over placing you in the class in the first place. The university played a role in preparing that system. Each of you played a role in preparing that system. So that's nature, things beyond my control, plus me, or you, as a researcher. Third, there's nature plus you and much more. I spoke last, one of the earlier videos. I referenced Pollster.com. This is a group that's been bought by Huffington Post, and they aggregate data from sources all over. I'm going to try to make this work. The only introduction of high tech. There we go. That is the record of President Obama's approval ratings throughout his term. Pollster, they are tracking 2,237 polls. I don't know how many pollsters are involved. The most recent ones added came from Gallup, Rasmussen, Monmouth University. Here's another from Gallup, one from YouGov in combination with The Economist, Fox News, on and on. Each of these is a preparation. They want to. The ultimate goal is to measure what people think of President Obama at the individual level, to find out, for example, what Jill thinks of President Obama. Does she approve or disapprove of the job he's doing as President of the United States? That's the goal of all of the polling houses. Each of them, though, is creating a different preparation. That's nature plus you. You, in this case, is the aggregator of the public opinion polls, and many more researchers who are involved at Gallup, at Rasmussen, at the Pew Trust, at Fox News, at CNN, all of the different entities that conduct polls, and they prepare a social system for measurement. They do all the selection of the people involved. They ask questions, which gets us now to Apparatus. They ask questions, and sometimes the questions are different. I'm going to do a whole fairly lengthy video on survey research, starting with its history and then sort of tying it into sampling and walking from its early roots in the 1940s and 1950s into the heyday of survey research, where I began to study it, the late 1980s, early 1990s, on into today, where survey research is more or less a disaster. Whole topic on that. By Apparatus, I refer to the people and things used to extract measurements from the units. the people and things used to extract measurements from the units. So if it's survey research, our apparatus is sort of consists of two things: the interviewer and the questionnaire. When I talk about survey research, I'm going to follow that up with question wording, question order, all sorts of sort of apparatus effects that produce different measures, supposedly of the same concept, but can affect really the outcome of any experiment, outcome certainly of any observational attempt at observational causal inference. So the system is prepared, an apparatus is deployed, and then a measure is observed. Measure is observed in nature only by the person who actually scored up the justices' votes behind closed doors. It's nature and you when I get your grades in a spreadsheet and I observe them for the first time. And then recording. Recording can involve nature and you, or sometimes only you. In the case of your grades, for example, your scores on the test, this is an area where I alone will be responsible. On the recording, at the other end of the scale, on the recording and systems prepared by nature alone, the recording is done by you when you transcribe a justice's score sheet of the votes on a particular case. In this mixture, where all of these poll results are aggregated, and the responsibility is nature, you, and many, many more people to record things accurately. This can, as we'll see, the next video is on measurement error. This could be a key source of measurement error, and I'll internalize it over here and tell you something that I do to try to minimize measurement error in the process of keeping scores, keeping grades, entering grades from students, quizzes, tests, and so forth. I double enter them in the spreadsheet, and I sort of enter them once, and I blind sort of move the column so that I can't see the score, and I entered them again, then I open both columns. I create a third column in the spreadsheet that's the difference between the two columns. So if this were a column, this would be A, B, C. I would enter these a second time. So it would be column C and column D. Take the difference between them, and if anything appears in that column other than 0, I've made a keystroke error that I can then reconcile by going back to the original score. That's one source of error that you have, as a researcher, an enormous amount of control, and responsible people do responsible things here. Control, as you go backward, typically leaves you to the point where at some point you might be studying things that essentially everything was put together in the process beyond your control. And so we get then down to the end to define terms that will be featured in the next video. Here we have x sub I measurement at some level: nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio, maybe supposedly absolute. The measure is supposed to tap a concept. It's supposed to be equal to the concept at the level of the individual, I, each person here. The concept over here, the score, your mastery of the material. Your mastery of the material is the concept. The score itself is the measure. And then there's going to be some error. Maybe introduced by me when I entered the grades, maybe introduced, as we'll see in the next video, in a variety of other different ways. But the key thing to take away at the end, is that the measure is never equal to the concept. It's not supposed to. We deal with measurements often on most often on arbitrary scales. Even the scale of distance, recall, is arbitrary. So it's something that we chose. They're not equal ever. The measurements are not equal to the concept, and we can illustrate that in physical space. Thinking of redundant measures, this is a yardstick, right? So it's supposed to be 3 feet long. It's August, early, just turned August here in Alabama, and it's quite humid outside. And there is an enormous temperature differential in the morning from the temperature in the afternoon, and also humidity. All those things change the length of this. So if I make a measure extremely precise, marks on the board, so precisely marked with a laser, right? To try to define the length 3 feet, I'm going to get a slightly different answer every single time I try to do it. That's because the measure is not equal to the concept. It never is. It's always equal to the concept plus some kind of error. The next video is all about this error, trying to minimize it, trying to understand it, trying to recognize a fundamental difference between kinds of measurement error, non-random versus random, and trying to sort of find a way to think about and describe and get a handle on causes of measurement error and consequences. The feature of the next talk will be measurement validity and measurement reliability. That's it for now.